Hello and welcome to the section where we're going to build an app called What's the Weather, and here's the app in a nutshell. You should be able to type in any city in the world. For example, if I want to know what's the weather like in Shanghai, I can go ahead and type this in and it's going to say, hey, there's moderate rain, there's some mist. If I want to do any other sort of city, let's say I want to figure out what it's like in Tokyo, I can type in Tokyo. Oh, there's broken clouds there. Okay, so this is sort of our end result. What we want you to use is the Open Weather Map API that we had done before. In fact, don't kill yourself by rewriting all that API code. You can use a lot of the code from the last project for this one. Also, you can notice I had this really cool background image here. I got that from unsplash.com. They've got a bunch of awesome images that you're free to use and don't require paying for them or attribution. So you can learn all about that here and go get the images that you want and go see them. So anyways, with that, you should be able to get this app completed on your own. Of course, if you'd like to see how I did it, you can watch with me through the rest of the lecture. Best of luck. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. We're going to make a new Android Studio project, and we're going to call this What's the Weather. And I didn't put an apostrophe in here. Any type of punctuation that you have with your Android project name, it can really affect the packages and can get nasty. So spaces are okay, but anything outside of that punctuation wise, I'd really recommend against. So we'll go ahead and get this fired up here. Now, the big thing is, as you saw, we need to get some sort of background image here for when we're working in the app. I mean, we don't have to, but I think it just makes it look that much better. So you kind of want to go find a nice picture that you think somehow relates to weather. So all sorts of different options here. Really, you just got to go until you find the one that you like. This one looks cool to me. I think it looks really awesome. That's going to be totally up to you about which one you want to get, but go ahead, download whatever image you'd like. Okay, we got that one coming down, and here it is opening up. So I'm going to go ahead and export this to my desktop, and I'm just going to call it background like that, and we'll go ahead and save that. Okay, and one thing I should note here is that this is probably going to be a really, really big image that we have on the desktop. In fact, look at this one, 7.9 megabytes. That's more than we need. So on a Mac, if you want to change how this looks, you can go ahead and go to, let's see, here it is in Tools, Adjust Size, and you can say, right now this is in inches. I want this to be in pixels. Yeah, 5,000 pixels. Something more like 500 is probably what we need. I mean, up to you about how you want to handle that. But doing something like that, and if we save that, that's going to make things a lot better. Let's see. Oh yeah, that's 97 kilobytes now. Can just be a little bit of overkill there. So now that our project is open, let's go to our drawable directory here, and we're going to right click, say reveal in Finder, and we want to be able to add in an image there. So we're going to go to our desktop, copy this, we'll go back, and inside of drawable, go ahead and paste that there. Excellent. And make sure this gets into our project. We'll right click, say synchronize selected files, and we should see drawable, our background image coming through there. Let's go ahead and open this up one more time in Finder. Yeah, somehow that didn't. Oh, it's V24 here. Okay, so I pasted it into the wrong folder. So now if we right click and say synchronize, look at that. There goes the background, and we can go check that out. Excellent. Okay, so with this, let's go ahead and get the style of the app right first. So we'll go over here to our XML file, and essentially the first thing that we want to do is we want to have the image view that fills up the entire screen. So that's where we're going to operate first. Let's go ahead and select this text view, and we'll just delete that. Then we want to go find ourselves an image view, bring that out here, and we want this to be filled up with background. So it's awesome that it's an option here to get us started. We'll just go ahead and select that. Now with this image view, we want to make sure that this is filling up the entire screen. So we're just going to add all the constraints here and just make sure that they are all 0. So I'm going to add 0 to that one, and when we do that, that fills up the whole screen. Now, we do want to kind of work here with the scale type. There's different options that you can choose, like fit XY, for example. There's also fit center. There's just straight up center, which kind of zooms it in a little bit. I believe that center crop is usually the best. It kind of crops it and makes sure that everything's filled. So to me, this looks pretty good, but you can totally decide how you want that to look. Okay. So with that, we want to go ahead and add now a text view on side of here, so we can ask the user, you know, what the weather is. So we're going to go ahead and drag one out here. And with this new text view, let's go ahead and right click and say, we want you to be centered horizontally. And also we want you to be a certain space from the top. We'll just kind of use what we have for now. And we've completely lost the text here. Let's see, I think it's gone down. We need this to go inside of the image view, like, or on top of it, but we need it to reference the top of the screen there. So we're going to go ahead and delete what we had before, and let's go ahead and say we want this for the time being, just right now. We're going to say center horizontally and also center vertically. This will kind of get us at least in the conversation. Then with this, we want to go ahead and add something to the top here, and we want this to be with the top of the screen. So there we go. We got that connected. Let's go ahead and change that to, I don't know, maybe something like 20. And we'll change that. Well, let's get rid of the bottom one. I think that's going to help us. There we go. So now we're in the middle. Now we have to go ahead and do some work with this. So the first thing is we've got to fix the text color so that we can actually read it. So here, if we select our options, we want to do background light or something that's white-ish. And then text size, really want to bump this up, maybe something like 40 here. And the message that we're trying to get across is we want to say enter, oops, got my cap locks on, enter a city. So this is basically telling user, hey, you know, go ahead and pick a city that you want to go see the weather for. So the next thing that we need to add here is an edit text. So here it's called plain text. If we just go ahead and drag one of these out, I'm going to make it a little bit below what we have here. So with this, let's go ahead and connect it up to the top, and look at that, it grabs next to the text view. That's great. Let's make sure that this thing is centered in its parent. Awesome. Now we want to go ahead and change the text color on this one so we can actually read what's going on here. So we'll say text color, switch it to that nice background light. Excellent. So with that, if we go ahead and switch back to this, we can go ahead and get rid of that. We don't want anything in there for right now. Then we want to add a button below that. So let's go ahead and grab a button. And we're going to bring that just right below. Again, we want this guy, if we right click here, to be centered. And then we also want to have the top constraint there, although I don't think that was what we were hoping for. Let me go ahead and undo that. Well, let's put the button back. And so with this button, hit the plus button there we go. And right click, say center in the parent. And then we're going to change this button to say, what's the weather? So double click here, we'll ask what's the weather. I forget that it automatically capitalizes it for you there, so that's good. And the last thing that we just need is a text view that essentially is going to fill up the rest of the screen, and this is where we can list out the information. So we'll go ahead and grab a text view, lay it beneath here, and again want to have some connection to the top, and look, that connected right there. We want one to the bottom. That wasn't what we were hoping for. Let's see if we can't connect that down there to the bottom, and we're going to say that this should go all the way there. Nice. And then we'll do our left and our right here, and we want let's go ahead and just say 8 on the left and the right. And again, we want that to actually go to the edge of everything. So if we do this, I'm not quite sure why that's not going to the edge there. Let's go ahead and try that one more time. No, that wasn't what we were looking for. I'm going to try stretching that to the edge. There we go. finally we've got that to take up the space. So with this one, we want to change a couple of things. So the big one is we want the text color to be that nice white color, so we'll go ahead and select that. The other thing that we want is we want it to be bigger, so let's go ahead and see what 20 looks like. Yeah, that might be big enough. You want to be careful that you don't go too big, because if you do that, then you're going to make it so that you can't read what's going on there. But we don't need any text in there for right now. We'll fill that up with information later, so we'll just kind of empty that. Okay, so here's a really nice starting place for our app. I'll go ahead and get this running on the simulator so we can just make sure that visually it looks like what we want. But then this gives us the opportunity to move on to our next step. Okay, and we have got a couple of issues here. It's worried about the background. So the error that we were having has to do with the background image that we have. So if we go to our project here and we right click this background image, we just need to change the name of this. So if we go to refactor and then rename, we can change this to background pick. I recommend just doing all lowercase letters, something like background pick, and then hit refactor. So that should work probably automatically for you. Because I've done this before, I have to go down and hit do refactor to just kind of confirm that that's what I want. But anyways, that will get that for you. So we'll close that out and open and run this app. Okay, and we'll make sure that the design and everything is looking great here. So it looks like that finished. Let's see it here. Boom. Yeah, that's looking really good. If we type out some stuff, we get that nice white text. That's looking really good. Okay. So the next step for us is we just got to make it so that when we hit that button, we can actually go get some information. And you'll be happy to know that we're not going to rewrite all this code from scratch. We're actually just going to use our code from our last project, because that would be a little bit insane to go keep writing the same code over and over. So let's open up our last project, the JSON demo here. And well, we'll just do this in a new window because we just need to copy this bit and then we'll bring it back. So we just want to go ahead and take all the code from here and basically bring it into our other project, right? Because this is all the code we needed to both connect with the API, download that information, and then process through it, right? We did all this JSON stuff to get there. So we should just reuse the code that we already have. So go ahead and just select the code that you need here. We're going to come all the way down. Oh, here we go. Awesome. So copy that, and then we need to bring it into our current project. And I'm just going to put it below this on create. And we get this nice import screen saying, hey, we're going to import all this stuff. And we'll say, okay, that looks good. Then we also need to go grab one more bit with this, and that's, when we create the download task and we execute for that specific URL. So let me go ahead and copy all this. I can't get to the end of that long string there, so I'm just going to copy all this. I'll have to delete that curly bracket, but once I have this, I'll come through. For the time being, I'll just go ahead and paste this in the onCreate. And then we should have all the code that we need in order to make this happen. Now, we want to make it so that when we hit this button, that we can go get this code from the API. So let's set a name for the onClick. Maybe let's just go ahead and call this weather. No, let's go ahead. Let's call this get weather. So we'll say get weather. All right. Then with this, we'll come back and we'll have to write the appropriate function here, function method. So public void get weather, and we'll go ahead and do our curly brackets. And we just want to take this code from here. Let's see if I can't scroll through and get all this. So we'll cut this, or rather, I guess, copy and paste. And I'll have to delete this since I didn't cut. And there. Now it will go get that code when the button is pressed. Okay. So we've got that in our get weather. Things are looking pretty good. We want to test and make sure that all this code is working right, that it comes down and it's logging out some information here on this on post execute. So with this, let's go ahead and give this a run on the emulator, and we'll see where it takes us. So let's see. Come on, app opens up. We're hoping, there we go. Okay, so once we're here, I'll go ahead and hit this button. And oh, that's not what we were expecting. Let's go see what we got. Let's see. Okay. So with our get weather function, we forgot to pass in the view parameter. So that's where it's saying I can't find that thing. So we need to say capital view, hit enter on that. There's our view parameter. One other thing that we need to fix that it didn't show us, but I know is going to be an issue. We didn't ask for internet permission. So let's go in our Android manifest. We're going to ask for uses permission for the internet. Man, Android Studio just knows that that's what we want. It's always at the top of the list there. But we'll go ahead and hit run there. So fixing both of those things, we shouldn't run into any issues now. But I guess we'll see what comes up now in the logs. Okay, so looks like we're coming up here in the emulator. Let's hit the button. And when we click that, look at that. We get the drizzle, light intensity drizzle. Good. This means our code is actually working and we can go get the weather. So the next step for us is that we want to make it so that we could enter some city like Shanghai, for example. And when we hit this button, we'll actually go get the weather for Shanghai rather than just for London. So the way to do this is first we have to get the information from this edit text. So let's go back to our visual side of stuff here, and we'll select this edit text. We've got to give it a proper name, and we could probably just leave it as edit text because it's going to be the one and only in the project, but we'll go ahead and define it up here. We'll say edit texts. It has the name edit text. Yep, pretty straightforward. And then on our on create, this is where we'll say edit text is equal to find view by ID, capital R.ID edit text. Awesome. So now that we have access to that, that means that we can then go through and actually grab the piece of information from there. So here inside of our code, before we do the download task and everything, we're first going to get access to that edit text. So we'll say edit text, and then to get to its information, we're going to say dot get text, and that gives us this thing called an editable. And to get to the actual string, we're going to have to say .toString in order to grab that. So basically what we want to do is take whatever string comes from the edit text and actually put it right here in the URL instead of saying London, UK. So we'll go ahead and cut this, and then where it says London, UK, and you can see there's like an ampersand after that, we're going to delete London, UK. We'll do a double quote and a double quote. So we can separate the two here, and then we'll say plus. We're going to put in that string and then plus, and we'll put in that ending piece. So basically we're saying, all right, do this part of the URL. We're going to add in whatever the user has entered, and then we're going to keep this app ID thing. This helps so that we don't have to go get an API key. I think this is just the sample one that they provide. And speaking of samples, we've got to get rid of this samples.openweathermap in order for this to work. So it just should be openweathermap.org. And if you do run into any issues with this not coming through, you might just have to go get an API key. But I think whatever you had clicked on from the documentation that had some sort of ID, it might not be the exact same as this one. It's very likely it's different. So I would get that from the website. But this should work for us. So let's go ahead and give this a try. So we'll hit run here. And yeah, basically the idea is that we'll type in a city name and it should go get it for us. And the thing that's, when we have all this try catch stuff, that this is really important, is we're letting the user directly influence what's going to go inside of this URL. So if they just put all sorts of crazy stuff in here, it would just crash everything. So that's where this try catch is really important to handle that information. So let's go ahead and try Shanghai. Let's get our logcat friend up and running here, and we'll say what's the weather, and look at that, it came through. It's got all this information here, and it's got a couple of things. So it's got rain, and it's got miss. So I said all these things. I guess it's really only got 2, and it's printing those things out. But, you know, that was cool because it was different from, remember when we did the London weather, it only showed one thing. So that means we're definitely connecting with something else. And if we wanted to try just for fun here, let's go ahead and put, just go ahead and type in London, and we'll say, what's the weather? Let's scroll down here and look at that. Just clouds, overcast clouds. Man, this is great. We're at a great point in our app. So rather than just have our information show here inside of Logcat, we should actually have it show up in that text view that we had created. So let's go back to our activity main, and let's get the ID for our text view here. And rather than text view 2, let's give it a more proper name like result text view. I think that's probably a good name for that. So we'll go ahead and go back here. We first have to define that. So we're going to say text view result text view. Okay, so we'll go ahead and define that. And then here on our onCreate is where we want to finally set this up. So result text view is equal to find view by ID, .id dot result. It's not auto completing for me there. Result text view. Find view ID r.id dot result. It should be result text view. Let's see what happens when we do that. We'll go ahead and try and run the app. Maybe Android Studio is just freaking out on me, although usually it's pretty good about it. Only, you know, if it's showing red, that something really is wrong. Let's see. No, looks like it just needs a little push forward there in order to get running. So with that, let's go ahead and we are going to make sure that we can now fill in the proper information when someone has, you know, click the button. They want that information that will show the right thing. So let me go ahead and move this down. And so here inside of this on post execute, remember we had talked about this would be an appropriate place to actually update UI information. Here inside of the do in background, not really, but here that we could do that. So what we're going to do here is the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a new string called message. So we're going to make a string called message, set that equal to an empty string, and ultimately what we want to do with this message string is after this for loop here, we first want to check and see if message is dot equals to an empty string. Well, I guess we want to do it the opposite of that, so we'll go ahead and put an exclamation in front of that. So we'll say as long as it's not equal to an empty string, then we want to take our result text view and say dot set text, and this is where we'll pass in the message. Okay, so it's basically saying do that, and then in this for loop, this is where we'd want to fill in the message string with, you know, the main and the description. So the way that we can handle this is we can go about and create 2 new strings. So one of them's we're going to have a string called main, and we're also going to have a string named description. Okay, and it's just going to handle the 2 pieces that we had before. So the first one for the main, we'll just go ahead and copy this piece of code and say main is equal to this, and we'll have description be equal to this. So we're basically saying go grab that JSON information, put it inside of these strings. We'll get rid of our logs. We don't really want to log it. We want to show it to the user. And once we have these 2, we'll go ahead and do a if statement. Just make sure that we have information inside of here. Okay, so we'll say main dot equals, and we'll just make sure it's not equal to this. We'll go ahead and do an exclamation point there, and we'll say that we also want to make sure that we have information. So we'll do our ampersand to confirm that this is the case as well. And we'll say exclamation point description dot equals, and we'll go ahead and put an empty string. And that'll allow us then to say, okay, as long as these things are not empty, then we can go and say, all right, message UR plus equals whatever is inside of main plus a colon space, I got to put this in quotes, colon, space, and then we're going to add the description. Okay, so now that we got that in place, moment of truth here, let's go ahead and test this out on our app. We still get this red squiggly. I hope that's just Android Studio being weird again. You can see that up there. And let's see. This time I forgot a semicolon. So that was a real issue. Hopefully that's the end of Android Studio acting up for now. So let's go ahead and test this. Ooh, I'm excited. This should be cool to see if this works. So let's try first London. That was our first example. What's the weather? Light rain. Okay. Let's see what it's like in Paris. Clear sky. Let's see what it's like in Tokyo. Broken clouds. And let's see what it's like in Shanghai. Look at that. We've got moderate rain, and we also have mist. Now you'll notice we had two things in this situation with Shanghai, but they all showed on the same thing, and it just kind of made it hard to read. So something that we do want to add here is we also want to add a string at the end here that says \r\n, and that will create a new line for us. So let's just go ahead and run this one more time, make sure that this is working exactly like we'd like. So here comes our app. Let's try that Shanghai again. It seems to be the only city with two pieces of information, and look at that. We've got rain and mist showing up. Excellent. Now there's one issue that I'd like to talk about, and that's that we haven't really seen this. When we're typing out a city name, we've just been using our keyboard, but when someone's using this on an actual Android device, there's going to be a virtual keyboard. So if you double click here in the edit text, you'll see that pop up. And you know, right now the way that our app's showing up, our phone is big enough and there's not enough text here that this doesn't cover that. But sometimes it's the case that does happen, that this keyboard is covering. Now the Android users do have this option to just hit this button and it's going to get rid of the keyboard. That's fine, but it's kind of a bad user experience for people when they're using the app. If this is covering text and maybe they don't know about it, we should just make it so when someone hits the button that we can get rid of the keyboard. And let me show you how we can do that. So we're going to go to our getWeather function method here. And this is where we're going to write some code to say, hey, you know what? If someone has hit the button, we're going to go get the weather, but we're also going to move down the keyboard. So what we'll do inside of here is we need to get something called an input method manager. So we're going to say input method manager, and we'll just hit enter on that. So we've got our input method manager that we'll just call manager, and we're going to set this equal to get system service, and we want capital context dot, and we'll do capital input method service. Okay, let's go ahead and semicolon that, and let's see, we've got to go ahead and cast this to say that this is going to be of type input method manager. All right, next thing that we need here is we need to take this manager and we're going to say, okay, go ahead and hide the soft input from window. And we don't want the one that says method, just hide input from window. And then what we're going to do inside of here is we're going to get to our edit text and say dot get window token. And we'll go ahead, we don't need any flags here, so we'll just provide 0 there, and we'll do a semicolon. So this should make it so that when we hit that find weather button, that this is automatically going to hide the software keyboard there, which is exactly what we're looking for. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this. I'm going to open up software keyboard. Again, it's not going to cover what we need, but just in case, and people have all different size of Android phones, but let's go ahead and hit this button, and look at that, it pops it down. That's an awesome user experience. Looks great. Okay, so now that we've got that in place, I want to talk about what happens if someone puts in some bad information. So what if someone types out like your mom and tries to find the weather? Well, because we have all those try catches, nothing really happens. We were able to handle that appropriately, but the user has no way of knowing that something went wrong. More than just, typing in just random gibberish. Of course, that's not going to do something. But also, if we say a city like San Francisco, and we say, what's the weather? Oh, well, it was able to do that. I was going to say, sometimes with spaces, there's going to be issues with that. Let's go ahead and try Salt Lake City. What's the weather there? So it is handling spaces fine. I do want to show you what I consider to be some more safe code to make sure this happens. But let's deal with the first thing, where if someone just types out random gibberish and says, what's the weather? We should probably alert the user to know that, hey, something's wrong here. We couldn't get the weather for you. So let's go down to first here in our try catch for when we're just inside of the HTTP URL connection, trying to download the appropriate data, all that stuff. So what we're going to do inside of here is we're going to make a toast. So we're going to say toast.makeText, and inside of here we're going to do get application context, comma, our string that we'll provide is say could not find weather, frowny face. And then after that, we'll say how long we want there to be that. So we'll say toast dot, let's do short. I like to keep things short. Okay. So this is just a little message that we want to show up, and we want to show this in a couple of places. So I'm actually going to copy this and just move down through the code, right? So if, for example, we had gotten an error here, we're going to want to go ahead and do a toast. If we were unable to show a message here, we'd want to add an else statement and say, hey, something went wrong. Go ahead and paste that there. So now we have some code there that will sort of save us if something has gone wrong, right? And we need to let the user know about it. So the one other part that I wanted to show you here that I think just makes our code a little bit safer is, and you can see this with this URL. So if we go back, let's go grab this code for getting the weather. Oh, come on, Android Studio. Let me get to the end of this thing. I'll copy that. I'll paste this in, and rather than the toString, right, this is where I'm going to put something like London. Okay. So that's showing the appropriate information for London, but let's say, for example, we did a two-part name like San Francisco. I hope I'm spelling that right. San Francisco. Anyways, if I go ahead and search that, it looks like I've given the wrong name. In fact, let me just do a better name. One that I can spell, Salt Lake City. There we go. You can see we get the appropriate information, but that's because Safari here has automatically said, hey, wherever there's a space, we're going to do a %20. And in URL terms, a %20 is the same thing as a space. And so it seems like our code is automatically handling that because we put in Salt Lake City and we're getting the appropriate information. But just to be safe, or if you ever are seeing that that's not happening, this is how you can turn spaces into like that %20, for example. So what you can do is make a new string, and we're going to call this encoded city name, and we're going to set this equal to URL encoder dot encode, and we're going to go ahead and pass it first this edit text dot get text toString blah blah, all that stuff. So go ahead and pass that there, and then we're going to say how it is that we want this encoded. So we're going to say capital UTF-8, and this says you should encode this in the appropriate way so that we can go ahead and convert this to how we need. So we are getting an error here because this is looking for a try catch to do all of this, because it's saying, hey, this could be risky. And by the way, this encoded city name, this is what we want to paste right there. So let's go ahead and do a try curly bracket, and we'll do an ending one there. Go ahead and catch all the exceptions, and if there is an exception, of course, want to print that out. But then also we want to do what we've been doing. We want to print out a little toast here to say, hey, something went wrong. We weren't able to get the weather. All right, so let's go ahead now that we've got that information. Let's run this app and make sure it's exactly what we're hoping for. Okay, so moment of truth here. I'm actually very impressed that it was able to handle this. My guess is that this automatic encoding is probably happening right here when we say, turn this string URL into an actual URL object. But again, this is maybe a little bit safer way to handle that. So let's try again something like Salt Lake City. Hit enter there and look at that. That works. Let's try entering random gibberish one time. Say, what's the weather? And we're not getting back any text that says that we were not able to get the weather. So let's go ahead and see what's going on there. So I was looking at the logs and we were getting proper JSON exceptions, but the toasts weren't showing up. And I thought, that's because I didn't say .show at the end. I always forget to do that with the toast. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this little blurb for all of our toast messages. Boom, there's another one. And I think we just have one less left. Yes, let's go ahead and put that there. And now let's run the app and we will try passing it some good old gibberish because we want to see that stinking toast message pop up. So we'll wait here. This will be a fun one. What if we don't put anything inside of here and say, what's the weather? Look at that. Could not find weather. I do gibberish. Says, what's the weather? Couldn't do it. But I try something like Tokyo. Bam. Broken clouds. And let's try San Francisco. What's the weather? Look at that. Ooh, we got 3 things from San Francisco. That's pretty cool. Okay, so hopefully you enjoyed creating this app, at least visually. I love the look of this one with that cool image in the background and having the white text and stuff. I thought that looked really nice. And I just loved how simple this was, yet because we are using someone else's API, it's insane that we can get the weather for anywhere in the entire world. And all we did was we showed, if there's going to be rain or sunshine, drizzle, whatever it is, right? But we could have grabbed the temperature. I'm sure there's other APIs that we can get forecasts from on that open weather, like all sorts of stuff. So really fun lecture here. I've got one more lecture just to sort of wrap everything up, and then we are done with this section.